Oh, hi. I know in the past I've talked about Legends and even looked at some Legends books like the original Marvel comics and Death Troopers, but I gotta tell you, before this, I didn't really get much into Legends or the old expanded universe. I decided to change that a few weeks ago when I read Heir to the Empire. As I'm sure many of you know, Heir to the Empire is the first book in the Thrawn trilogy. Right now I'm midway through Dark Force Rising. You can see it on my shelf over there. So if someone decides to comment, please no spoilers for the rest of the trilogy. Whatever, I don't get comments on my videos anyway. But alas, I will move on to the actual video, starting with, I guess, a brief history lesson and a summary of the book. I'm gonna cut that out, right? This book was published in 1991, and based on what I've read on Wikipedia, I believe it basically reignited interest in Star Wars during its most dormant period between the releases of Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace. Which, I mean, I can see why. It's a really enjoyable book. It features the main characters of the original trilogy, you know, Luke, Han, Leia, and their various allies in the newly formed New Republic. That was redundant. As they fight against the remaining Empire, specifically Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's this blue guy on the cover. I'm sure many of you know. Well, I guess fight isn't necessarily the right word. It's more struggle with the decisions of, because they never actually meet Thrawn or learn his name. They just kind of think it's the Empire. They never actually learn about who their enemy is. Which, I mean, it's fine. It's the first book in a series. There's still plenty of time. It's just can't really be described as fighting. While all this is happening, there's like some political stuff between the leader of the Bothans and Admiral Akbar as they vie for more control over the New Republic. And also there's a Jedi Master, or Dark Jedi Master, should I say, named Jorah Sabaoth, a clone of Jedi Master Jorah Sabaoth. You see, you can tell he's a clone because there's an extra U in his name. Trust me, everyone recognizes that this is stupid. And basically, Jorah Sabaoth wants to get Han and Leia and Leia's unborn kids and train them as Dark Jedi. So cool. So I guess with that very vague plot summary out of the way, let's go on to my honest thoughts. I feel like there's not much that I can say about this book that hasn't already been said. I mean, obviously it's a great book. I already said that because it revitalized interest in Star Wars in the early 90s. And created a huge legacy of novels that followed it. It basically established the idea of this one shared Star Wars canon, which was pretty new at the time. You know, I enjoyed it. I liked it. Legends Thrawn is probably my new favorite Star Wars character. You know, standard heir to the Empire stuff. One thing I will say is that the book can be pretty contrived sometimes. One particular example of this is, okay, so basically the book has like 3 different plot lines going. At least 3, sometimes 4. One follows the New Republic, one follows Grand Admiral Thrawn and the Imperial Remnant, and one follows Mara Jade as she works for Talon Card. The book has kind of a hard time connecting the New Republic, at least the Han and Lando part of the New Republic storyline, to the Talon Card storyline. Talon Card and the Empire are connected because Thrawn needs one particular creature that can be found on the planet on which Card has set up his base. Luke connects with Card because his Force-sensitive second-in-command, Mara Jade, senses him out in space and they go and get him. But Han and Lando really only seem to go to Talon Card because they're like, we need a smuggler. And Lando's like, I heard about this smuggler named Talon Card. And they try to say that he's like the second most prominent smuggler in the galaxy, but I mean, it just seems a little too convenient, a little too contrived, and like it's trying too hard to fit them all together. Another thing that's pretty contrived is that there are several Wookiees that can just speak English. It's kind of explained for one of them, but what really gets me here is that there's two of them. And it's like, not buying it, Chief. Thrawn also just kind of figures stuff out, and it's a bit contrived. Like, the rebels hatched this plan to send Leia to Kashyyyk to hide her from the Empire because they're trying to attack her. And Thrawn just instantly figures out their entire plan that they spent like a chapter figuring out. Which, I mean, it's a really cool moment for him as a character to show how smart and cunning he is. But his reasoning just kind of sucks. But the stuff with Thrawn is a complaint that a lot of people have, so I won't go too much into it. This is what I was saying about there's not really much new that can be said about this book. I guess I'll talk about some good stuff now. So, Thrawn in Legends is now one of my favorite Star Wars characters, just because of how smart and cunning he is. And it's just absolutely amazing what he can do, and you wonder how the New Republic is going to beat him. I also really like the writing style that really gets you inside the characters' heads and shows you what they're thinking. It'll often interrupt the action to kind of show you the character's thought process and what they notice without directly looking into their thoughts. I know it sounds weird, but it's really effective and cool in the text. Thrawn trilogy was often called the Star Wars sequels that were never made, or the Star Wars sequel trilogy that was never made, before the actual sequel trilogy was made, and most people were disappointed. But I'm not necessarily sure that it's true that this is the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Obviously, there's much more to come after this, but this book doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie. It's a great book. I love this book, but this would not work as a movie. The movie it feels most comparable to would be like the 2008 Clone Wars movie. I remember thinking that, and I think it's because while it is a somewhat self-contained thing, obviously there's more to come from this series, and they're gonna have a lot more adventures after this. And on that note, I'd like to express my excitement to continue reading the trilogy. I'm sorry about how short this video was, but last week's video took a lot out of me and it wasn't even that good. So bye. Stay cool, my Star Wars dudes. Rad.